Welcome back to LEGO Wars and Heat B of the series. Last time out we kicked off with a defending champion faltering for the second year in succession as Tantrum suffered some serious thermal cutout that blunted its charge, leaving it clinging onto a wildcard in the play-ins. This week sees the return of the third seed's Orby Blade, who smashed onto the LEGO Wars scene last year, destroying several robots in its path on the way to bronze. They're joined by a fellow grand finalist Emulator, who come into this year seeded 22nd and out to regain their Series 3 form after a surprise upset to the hands of Muffin last year. Let's see who else will join them tonight.
First, from Seoul in South Korea and season number 3, Orby Blade.
The third seeds come into the main series fresh off of deep runs and champions and international, however their drive battery has been temperamental and could bite without warning.
From Columbus, Ohio in season number 22, Emulator.
The Retcon Vert looks to be back in form after just missing out on the All-Stars crown this year and will be determined to show that that wasn't a fluke.
From Hudson, New Hampshire, P1-4.
P1 has once again changed livery, now donning a Classics Team Lotus look along with some more effective wedges to improve its long-standing ground game issues.
From Reedham, Barn.
Barn is that straw TPU sock puppet the size of Venezuela, and now you know.
From Toronto, Zoidy Blu.
The only horizontal crusher in the series has been on the up again after a strong international performance that could play spoiler for our seeds tonight. We'll begin tonight's action with our third seed's Orby facing whatever Barn turns out to be, so let's pass over to Sam to find out.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Heat B then kicking off with Orby Blade and Barn. Barn is a barn. Orby Blade is our number 3 seed after a run to the semi-finals last year, and Barn has already self-destructed. It has that huge spinning disc on the rear, and the Barn, well, currently couldn't hit a barn door with that weapon. They have been shredded here by Orby Blade. Orby Blade, of course, fresh off a top 16 run in the International Special, and of course a top 4 finish in LEGO Wars Champions as well. They've worked on the ground game to help it being ripped away, and that's come in handy against a big horizontal spinner like Barn. Barn, meanwhile, being shredded by Orby Blade. And the number 3 seeds off to a dominant start in the 5th series of LEGO Wars, and they're going to try and hope to prove that last year was no fluke, and Barn is statuesque and is still and silent, and something's gone flying off into... There's nothing left of Barn! What's going on? Barn in all kinds of trouble. Orby Blade using that weapon to great effect, shredding the rear as well. The chassis almost destroyed and dismantled completely, and there goes the wheel. A second wheel of Barn has been ripped away, and they're being counted out here. Orby Blade, in some style, kicks off their campaign in LEGO Wars Series 5. Another wheel comes off. Barn is now counted over and out.
6.
Orby Blade is the winner, and it wasn't even a contest, was it? Well, the match in truth was over before it really began. Barn destroying itself on the arena wall with the horizontal spinner. Orby Blade then just capitalised and did some more damage with its own horizontal spinner. The number 3 seeds off to an excellent start. Barn will have to regroup and rethink as they try and progress through the heats. Orby Blade, no sign of the battery issues that have plagued it in the last 2 competitions, and a good strong start.
Orby literally blew the doors off of Barn to start their campaign strongly. Now it's Emulator's chance to start their revival campaign against P1.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Away we go then, returning number 2 seeds of last year, this series 22 seeds, Emulator, taking on P1 GTP in the classic Team Lotus livery, the British Racing green and yellow, and of course Crabantine, who is back after its little adventure with Lemmings and has been de-scooped at the front. One of the digger buckets has been ripped away by Emulator. Seeded 22nd after going out in the heats last time around, this time in the process of trying to destroy Crabantine. P1 trying to get round the back of Emulator and has done so very well here. Can it turn the big spinning disc upside down? Not on this occasion. Emulator gets away and gets that weapon back into contact with P1 GTP's front end. The spikes raise and drop. P1 not as good a ground game as Emulator by the looks of things so far. Emulator, redesigned from the last series, of course, had a pretty torrid time in in LEGO Wars Series 4 as the number 4 seed, not as torrid as Crabantine there though, completely wrecked. Completely destroyed, over and out. Crabantine, I think, eliminated from the fight, and now P1 has to fight alone. Emulator on a decent run of form in the side competitions over the summer and autumn. They were able to come second in LEGO Wars All-Stars, only missing out on a win via the judges, a split judges decision against Shatterstar, their teammate from Team Retcon. P1 GTP, that wedge at the front now split. And Emulator looking pretty good so far. As I said, they had a pretty torrid time in LEGO Wars Series 4, dropping out in the heats. They want to make sure that this time no such mistakes happen, and they've high centered P1 against the arena sidewall on top of the lifting arena spikes. Is that the end of the fight? I think it might be. P1, can they translate across the arena? I don't think they can. Emulator is circling into light, and there is the timer. The countdown has begun and will end in 5 seconds. And P1 GTP has been defeated and destroyed. Emulator takes a famous win and is destroying Crabantine some more. Cease is called. Emulator take 3 points and get off to a winning start. Well, P1 was second best in all departments here. Poor old Crabantine getting dissected and destroyed by Emulator in form that we're used to seeing it in the arena. Crabantine completely wrecked, and then the attention turned to the big robot for Emulator. They pushed P1 around quite nicely. P1 couldn't respond in turn, and in the end got high centered and immobilized over by the arena spikes. Emulator off to a good start with 3 points on the board.
The Spikes are alive and well after a year off as they switch off P1, giving Emulator the 3 points. Orby's back in the arena now with a tough ask to double their points as Zoidy Blu enters the fray.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Zoidy Blu making their bow in LEGO Wars Series 5. Orby Blade fresh off a knockout win over Barn. They'll have recovered quite nicely from that and are back in the arena to take on a difficult opponent in Zoidy Blu. Never disgraced themselves. Not seeded this time around. They finished in the top 16 in the past of LEGO Wars back in Series 2, but have never made it out of the heat since Series 2, so they'll be wary of that. They've got a very difficult heat to get out of this time as well, with Orby Blade, the number 3 seed, back up to spinning speed. Emulator, of course, as well, the returning runner-up from last series, well, from 2 series ago, last year's seed number 2. Zoidy, been on good form recently. They lost to Tantrum in the International Special in the tournament just prior to Series 5, although that wheel on that one-hand side looks locked to me, and I don't think Zoidy Blu is driving as happily as they would be. They've got a good grapple there of Orby Blade, but Zoidy Blu here, they are struggling to drive around the arena. Look, the wheels are spinning on, as you look at it now, the left-hand side of the robot, but on the right-hand side, from this angle, they are not turning. I wonder if that was damage from Orby Blade. We did see Orby Blade smack that side with the spinner at one point, and I wonder if they've got terminal damage on that side. The motors or something is damaged, but it's certainly not happy, Zoidy Blu, and they are crab walking. That is, unavoidable to see. And there goes a wheel of Zoidy Blu. Was that the locked wheel, I wonder? Are they able to drive a bit more happily now? Yes, is the answer. Zoidy Blu down to 3 wheels on their wagon. There goes the spinner again of Orby Blade. Good tactics and driving from Orby Blade, and Zoidy Blu goes for the pit button. They think that they are in trouble. They need to bail for the pit. Orby Blade pushing Zoidy Blu towards that pit, and they're over the pit, and they're down the pit. Orby Blade with another 3 points on the board, and another dominant win. Well, a brave attempt from Zoidy Blu, but in the end, Orby Blade proved too strong. Good grapple early on, but the damage soon told here when Orby Blade swung around and smacked that wheel. It pinned the wheels on one side and kind of left Zoidy Blu with a lot of work to do. They tried their best, they grappled well, and I think they'll do better against some of the other robots in this heat, but in the end, the damage was done by Orby Blade, the pit was opened by Zoidy Blu, and Zoidy Blu found the pit.
A brilliant snipe on the wheels from Orby continues their perfect score at the top of the table. P1 meanwhile will be out to get some points on the board against Barn. Maybe Barn will keep together this time.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Well, both of these two will be hoping to recover after a difficult first fight for each of them. Barn, of course, dismantled by Orby Blade. P1 GTP destroyed by Emulator, both on 0 points. Need to get off and underway, and quickly. Crabantine trying to harass and chase down the Barn. Barn, of course, has been blown down but rebuilt. Ready for fight number 2. And a good impact there from the Barn weapon on Crabantine's front plough there. The digger bucket ripped away, and that could be some good damage. It did. Oh, something's come flying off there. Is that the chain for the weapon maybe? I'm not sure. Maybe it's the drive chain of Crabantine, and Crabantine again has been smacked around by Barn. Barn has had its roof blown down. Not exactly the big bad wolf P1 so far, but P1 is trying its best to keep on the offensive, keep on the attack. And Barn, so far, a much better display. P1 GTP hoping to get some points on the board. Crabantine, meanwhile, has completely split apart and is, well, I don't know what it's doing in the arena. I don't think they know what they're doing in the arena. They're back with the main robot after going full French in the international special with Lemmings. And at the moment is being torn apart. Barn, meanwhile, the weaponry has stopped on Barn momentarily, is back up spinning again. P1 pushes Barn back. In underneath goes P1. Can it turn Barn up and over? Barn in the corner. Oh, not quite able to turn it over there, P1. They might be able to now, though. P1, better angle this time. Can they get it? Not quite. And something's come fall. Quite a few things actually have fallen out of the bottom of Barn. The base plate of Barn has gone. And now, like, all of the electronics, all of the internals have fallen out the bottom. It's like me after a curry, really. Barn, at the moment, is in peril. P1 has stopped momentarily. Barn is still moving. P1 has stopped and is back moving again. Maybe a little bit of thermal cut out there. P1 with a good push of Barn towards the pit. They're next to the pit now. Barn is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The rock being P1, the hard place being the pit. They are now over the pit with 2 wheels. They cannot get away from there. Are they high centered, I wonder? I think it could be all over for Barn in this fight. P1 trying to give some CPR, I think, to poor old Crabantine, who's had a real fist of it in this heat, hasn't it? Destroyed by Emulator, destroyed by Barn. Barn goes down the pit. P1 get the 3 points. Well, it was a much improved display from both of these two in this fight. Barn certainly took offence to Crabantine in the arena, giving them an absolute pasting and eventually splitting it in 2. P1, as the fight wore on, proved the more effective. The base plate of Barn coming away was crucial, which meant all of the electronics came out of the bottom, left them high-centred, and eventually easy enough to pit themselves.
Barn spins itself into oblivion as we continue tonight's run of KOs. Orby's track record will surely bring that to a close at some point as they're back in the arena against Emulator.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Away we go then, the number 22 seeds, Emulator and Zoidy Blu go head to head. Zoidy Blu, 1 defeat on the board thus far. They lost to Orby Blade, no disgrace there. Taking on Emulator, who of course got the win over P1 in the first fight. 2 very different robots in who they fought for Zoidy Blu. Emulator, 2 very low, compact robots, difficult to damage on a good day, and Zoidy Blu so far proving a very tricky opponent to deal with because they have got a good grapple hold here of Emulator. One side of the claws on the track, the other on the front wedge, and they've got a good hold there. They let go, they back away, and they get back in again. And another good attack here from Zoidy Blu. Good control thus far from the horizontal crusher, and using those jaws, look at the front, to keep Emulator away. Good tactics so far from the 4-wheel drive horizontal grabber. Emulator thus far will be frustrated. Good impact there, didn't really get a good clean connection, but it was an impact nonetheless. And they'll be frustrated so far that they haven't been able to get round to the more sensitive parts of Zoidy Blu. What can Emulator do? Not moving happily across the windows, it's certainly juddering with those caterpillar tracks on either side. And Zoidy Blu goes for the pit burn. That's a sign of confidence from them. They think they've got enough in hand to maybe get Emulator down the pit. It'd be a famous win for Zoidy Blu. They've not made it out of the heats in 3 series. And Emulator will be hoping that they don't this time because it reduces their chances, of course, of going through. Emulator, meanwhile, still have not been able to get that weapon into play, have they? They've really struggled thus far to get any meaningful engagement. Zoidy Blu doing a very good job of running down the clock here. We know they have the thermal cutout issues. I think they're rearing their head again here. But so far they've done a decent job of using the geometry of their weapon to keep Emulator away from the main majority of the robot. Brilliant stuff so far from Zoidy Blu. Pushing Emulator back once again. Emulator will have one eye on the clock because they know they need to kind of turn this fight around, because so far I would say Zoidy Blu surprisingly has been on top, and a good push from Zoidy Blu onto the arena spikes. Emulator taken for a ride. Back in the centre of the arena though. Trying to get to the sides again, but Zoidy Blu once again using those jaws to keep Emulator away, although Emulator's discarded fork high-centered Zoidy Blu briefly, but back down on their wheels they go. So far so good for Zoidy Blu. Emulator now at the side. Can they cause some meaningful damage here? Well, we're going to go to time here. Emulator needs to do something and quick if they want to win this decision. With 5 seconds to go, it's been a brilliant performance from Zoidy Blu, and a disappointing performance has to be said from Emulator. It goes to the judges. What a fight. The words well managed come to mind when thinking of this fight from a Zoidy Blu perspective. They use those horizontal grabbers at the front to disrupt and kind of discombobulate Emulator in the arena. Emulator couldn't really execute their game plan on any meaningful occasion. They got a few good hits in there, but it was Zoidy Blu was the one who was pressing the issues and forcing the problems, and I think the judges' vote will reflect that.
And the winner by unanimous decision is Zoidy Blu. A cagey display, but a win is a win for Zoidy as it's looking pretty open for that second position. Orby meanwhile is sitting pretty at the top as they look to beat P1 for the second time this year.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Away we go then for fight number 3 for both of these two. The number 3 seeds, Orby Blade, with that big horizontal spinner, looking brutally effective so far in this heat. Against P1 GTP, who have been okay so far. They lost to Emulator, got a fortuitous maybe pitting against Barn, although Barn kind of self-destructed in that fight, but this is a much more accomplished and scary horizontal spinner to be taking on in Orby Blade, and that big horizontal spinner weapon is so brutal, it's so effective, and that is why they are the number 3 seeds. Crabantine goes for the pit button. That is an interesting tactic. They are going to try and pin to them maybe and push them down the pit. Orby Blade has lost part of its rear armour there at P1 in underneath Orby Blade here. Brilliant tactic so far, and trying to use that lifting arm to clamp the horizontal spinner of Orby Blade. Very good tactic so far from P1 GTP. Off comes the number 1. Over the spikes goes Crabantine. Good attack again by P1, trying to use that lifting arm to clamp that spinner, but can't do it. So far, P1 I would say just about on top. Orby Blade, can they get away from harm's reach? Stuck in that corner now on the spikes on the arena floor. P1. Oh, I think they've lost a wheel there. Well, speaking of losing wheels, Crabantine's lost theirs. P1 has lost it as well. Look, it's come off. It's in the weapon at the moment of Orby Blade. So, 3 wheels on both of their wagons now. And P1 is really struggling to get away. Look, it's kind of limping along out of that corner. P1, oh, there goes the wheel. The wheel's gone down the pit. Brilliant shot from Orby Blade. P1, immobile currently. Can they get away? Yes, they can. But Orby Blade is now the one with the fight to lose, I think. So far, I'd say P1, unfortunate that Orby have kind of managed to get away, because they've been so far brilliant, P1, but P1 is really struggling now. Crabantine, oh no! It's attacked its teammate and flipped itself over. Well, it won't be the first time. It won't be the last time. Poor old Crabantine. It was all looking so good for P1, but now they're down the mini-bar, they've lost a wheel, and they've got a lot of work to do against the 3rd seeds. Orby Blade, so far looking pretty dominant in this heat. And you have to say, on the evidence of this, they'll do well going through to the series semi-finals as things stand. Orby Blade using that big horizontal spinner. It's fully up to speed now. We're down to the last 10 seconds. They've survived a scare here, Orby Blade. I think they know that. P1 ran them hard at the start, but it's going to go to a judge's decision between the two. Well, on paper, this is a fight that P1 should be very well suited to, and initially that did seem to be the case. Even Crabbentine was able to resist that horizontal spinner at the start, and Orby Blade was in trouble until the wheel of P1 gets torn off there by Orby Blade. Crabbentine loses its own wheel and turns itself over in the process, and from that moment on, it was Orby Blade's fight to lose, in my opinion.
And the winner, by unanimous decision, is Orby Blade. P1 somehow loses the same wheel it did in their Champions bout as Orby continues their streak at the top as we move on to Fight 7 of the night between Emulator and Barn.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Emulator taking on Barn then. The number 22 seeds need to get back on the saddle after that loss to Zoidy Blu via the judges, and oh my goodness! Oh, Barn. It looks like a bit of a, well, a lot less structurally sound now. It's like Emulator's the big bad wolf and Barn is the wooden house. And Emulator's come along and he's huffed and he's puffed and he's blown Barn away. Goodness me, and Emulator, after a difficult match against Zoidy Blu, seems to be back on form once again. Barn, meanwhile, though, I mean, they've just got no structural integrity at all now. There's nothing left to buy. You can see all the components inside. Emulator's got kind of free reign to do as they desire. Emulator, going weapon to weapon with Barn. Now Barn's weapon has split and is no longer balanced. Emulator here, cruising to victory. On the evidence of this, I mean, there's nothing much left of Barn, really, is there? It's shaking itself to bits. And Emulator looking very good for another easy victory in this heat. They, of course, dominated against P1 and knocked P1 out. Can they get another 3 points on the board here by knocking out Barn? Well, so far, on the evidence of this, you'd have to say yes, although Barn is still running in this fight. They'll be trying to play party pooper. They're yet to get off the mark themselves. Knocked out by Orby Blade and P1. They've got no points on the board, so they'll be hoping to get something out of this heat. And more shrapnel and damage is caused to Barn. Emulator looking pretty good at the moment for a place towards the top of the table. Barn trying to get off the mark. They only have one fight left themselves. Emulator will have one fight left as well after this against the third seed Orby Blade, so they'll be hoping for as many points on the board as possible before going into that fight to ensure that they are finishing in that top three. Don't have to worry about a wild card then. Emulator looking pretty good so far, hits the pit button, but Barn is still in this, and they will be concerned, Emulator, that they haven't been able to finish the job off just yet. Barn so far yet to get off the mark, and you'd have to say Emulator have been incredibly destructive, but they've not finished Barn off. Is that a concern for later on in the competition when they face more convincing opponents, let's say, than Barn is? Because, you know, so far Barn's staying power has been very, very good, and you have to give them some kind of credit because they're still in the fight with time ticking away. Emulator will be concerned, and it is going to go to time. Well, Barn has survived 3 minutes here with Emulator, and that is nothing to be scoffed at. An incredible performance from them. We know which way the judges' decision is going to go, but Barn deserves a lot of credit for staying in the fight for as long as they did. Well, as I said, I think we know which way the result's going to go, but Emulator initially were incredibly destructive and impressive. They dismembered and disrobed poor old Barn, and Emulator looked pretty good to be going towards 3 points. They even destroyed Barn's weapon, but Barn stayed in the fight, to their credit. You know, they did, you know, make an effort to survive, and it is going to get them a point on the board, but surely there's only one winner.
And the winner, by unanimous decision, is Emulator. Barn gets a point! I repeat, Barn gets a point! They're still out of contention tonight though, as Emulator moves within 2 points of Orby ahead of their clash at the end of the heat. Meanwhile, it's crunch time for P1 and Zoidy as they both need a win to keep in touch with Emulator.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Interesting starting position there for P1 and Crabantine, but Crabantine goes face to face with Zoidy Blu. Trying to get those little bucket scoops in underneath Zoidy Blu and prevent them from translating across the arena. These two in the past have been notoriously suffering with thermal cutout, so don't expect any different in this fight. I'm sure that will rear its head at some point during the next bout. Meanwhile, P1 were able to get in underneath Zoidy Blu for a second there. Zoidy Blu gets those jaws as wide open as it can. Can't quite fit all of P1 GTP in those jaws. And so far, you'd have to say pretty tentative between the two. Zoidy Blu trying to get those arms and grab maybe that wheel on that one-hand side, and it has done so. It's got clutched in behind the wheel, trying to pull off that wheel. Didn't quite manage to do it. P1 in underneath, trying to push Zoidy Blu down the pit maybe. Teamwork there from Crabantine, who activated the pit, of course. Zoidy Blu now has a grapple of P1's wedge at the front. Crabantine trying to push Zoidy Blu towards the pit. Zoidy Blu now has a grapple of Crabantine itself. Good tactical battle here between these two. Well, 3 if you count the mini-bot as well, of course, which you should always do. P1 now in underneath and pushing Zoidy Blu up against the arena wall. Can it turn it over? That'll be impressive. A good point scoring for them. Oh, I thought for a second there Zoidy Blu was going to back themselves into the pit. Doesn't quite manage to get it done though, P1. P1 now caught from the back by Zoidy Blu. Zoidy Blu taking on Crabantine once again. In underneath goes P1. Doesn't quite get all the way in underneath, but somewhat. Zoidy Blu pushes P1 back once again. Good tactical fight between these two. A little bit lower energy than the last match, but still nonetheless entertaining. Zoidy Blu in underneath, trying to get those grabbing arms maybe to pull off one of the P1 front wheels. Crabantine trying to push Zoidy Blu towards the pit now. Are we seeing those thermal issues as I mentioned earlier, because P1 is struggling to translate, Zoidy Blu is struggling to translate as well, but they're also, I think, locked there with Crabantine now released. And what can they do? Can either of these two deliver a decisive knockout blow? I wonder if it is going to be possible for them to do so. P1 in underneath Zoidy Blu once again. Crabantine trying to push it as best it can do, but just doesn't have the drive power or the traction, does it? P1 trying to lift up Zoidy Blu. Again, doesn't manage it. Good grapple hold of Zoidy Blu. Well, it is going to go to time between these two. I don't envy the judges. This is going to be a really difficult decision to make. Zoidy Blu and P1 cancel each other out
6.
as we go to time, and it's over to our panel of experts. Oh no, there goes Crabantine. Wasn't exactly high octane and blood pumping action, was it? But nonetheless a decent fight between two very solid machines. P1 did a lot of the early aggression, almost getting Zoidy Blu turned over, but I think Zoidy Blu's control was exemplary throughout and even got a few nudges back on P1 themselves. Almost got some of the wheels off. Crabantine, little ineffective, but that wasn't due to their own fault. They just lacked the dry power to get Zoidy Blu in the pit. This is going to be close.
And the winner, by unanimous decision, is Zoidy Blu. A classic Zoidy display brings them closer to P1 in the points with a fight in hand against already out Barn. With the amount of rebuilds Barn has needed tonight, the odds are stacked against it, pulling off the upset, but anything can happen in the arena, so let's find out.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1, activate.
Last appearance of the night then for these two. Zoidy Blu straight out of the traps, knowing that they could potentially qualify with a win here. Currently, as things stand, they are in, I believe, in 4th place. But a win here will put them as high as 2nd. A clear win will put them as high as 2nd. And any potential results going their way could leave them there. But if they win, they're guaranteed to finish 3rd. Barn, meanwhile, sadly, will not be able to get any higher than 4th. I know it's a shock to you as well, but we'll have to wait and see how they get on here. Good impact there from the barn weapon, and the barn weapon, which has been mostly ineffective throughout the night, has now become totally ineffective as the weapon chain has broken, and Zoidy Blu smells blood here. They've gone for the pit button. Barn is stopped in the middle of the arena, and could that be the end of Barn's challenge today? Barn, they're not moving happily, are they? Currently sat in the middle of the arena. Okay, they're going again. I thought for a second they might have knocked themselves out with that weapon chain breakage, and maybe something got interfered with inside the robot, but I think they're still okay. They're moving back towards the screws. Pushed back there. Zoidy Blu trying to chase them down, trying to get those 3 points on the board. They could be very useful later on, depending on how results go elsewhere. Zoidy Blu looking pretty good here for a place in the top 3 of the heat and a place in the bracket at the end of the series, which is kind of rare for Zoidy Blu. I don't think they've made it for a few years. I think not since Series 2 have Zoidy Blu made out of the heats. So this will be a very, very impressive performance from them. Barn, meanwhile, hugging the wall by the screws now. Try and stay out of trouble. Maybe get another point on the board. Maybe that's their aim for the night. Get a second point on the board and go home with 2 points. Zoidy Blu, meanwhile, they've got bigger ambitions and aspirations. They're hoping here to get a victory on the board. Zoidy Blu now has Barn in the screws and is dragged up onto the screws and is immobilised on the screws. And Zoidy Blu circles with delight because they know they've got the result here, and immobilised on the screws is Barn. They're going to be counted out with 5 seconds unless they can get down, and the answer is no, they cannot.
6.
Barn is immobilised. Zoidy Blu gets all 3 points. It's a good win for the veteran. Well, the Barn robot has been incredibly great fun, but unfortunately their run in LEGO Wars Series 5 ends here. Zoidy Blu in complete control of the fight, using the gripping arms to cause damage to the chassis once again. The weapon getting 1 good hit from Barn, the weapon chain breaking, and from then on in it was just, Zoidy Blu taking its time, pushing them into the screws and leaving them there high and dry and immobilised. Good win for Zoidy Blu.
Zoidy secures a rare KO via the screws to go second, ending P1's run of making the bracket every series. Now all that remains is our seeds to fight it out. Orby are already guaranteed a bracket spot, but it's a must win for Emulator to overtake Zoidy, so let's see who will finish tonight on top.
Roboteers, stand by. 3, 2, 1. Activate.
As always, then, our 2 seeds go head-to-head in the final fight of the night. The number 3 seeds, Orby Blade, the number 22 seeds, Emulator. Orby Blade currently looking for a flawless run through the heat. Emulator, meanwhile, causing damage to Orby Blade's rear end. Look at that! Ripping away part of the armour package. And all of the armour package is going to go, I think. Yes, it is. There it goes. So Orby Blade is now defenceless to defend from that vicious vertical spinner of Emulator that does seem to have picked up form once again. They did lose a fight earlier tonight to Zoidy Blu, but since then they have been imperious, and Emulator here is going to cause a massive, statistical upset against Orby Blade. Orby Blade, the 3rd seeds, are in major, major peril here. Emulator has got them on the ropes, and the battery issues once again for Orby Blade, I think, have reared their head. They're being counted down and counted out. Well, Orby Blade defeated, Emulator successful, and they've won the heat with that victory. An amazing result, an amazing comeback for our 22nd seeds. Orby Blade will be wondering what they have to do to pick up their form in the brackets, as Emulator takes the discarded rear armour of Orby Blade as a little trophy. Well, after the embarrassing way that they lost last series, Emulator have been back with a bang this time around. They have knocked out the 3rd seed in some style. Orby Blade will have to maybe lick their wounds and come back in the bracket stronger, but what a way to win, and what a way to win the heat for Emulator.
The battery curse strikes at the very end, giving Emulator 3 points to jump to the top at the end of the heat. It's been a great night of action in the arena as our seeds have had to work for it, but both thoroughly deserved their spots in the post-heat bracket. That's all from us tonight, but join us next time as the 5th seeds Pegasus look to test our new arena OOTA gaps. For now though, I've been your host David Smeg, and we'll see you in the next one.
Mine.
You actually knocked the smoke machine back for that.
Oh god.